Okay, good evening. If I can bring this meeting to order, please. And a warm welcome to those attending the Major Applications Planning Committee and our viewers watching live on the Council's YouTube channel, Hillingdon, London. My name is Councillor Steve Tuckwell and I am the Chairman of this committee. Details of the business to be considered today are shown on the agenda, copies of which are accessible online underneath the live broadcast. For those present in the room and intending to speak, please note that you will be filmed and any statements you make will be recorded and made public. A reminder to anyone speaking today that your voice will only be audible online when the microphone is switched on. In terms of fire alarms this evening, we are not expecting a fire drill, so if the alarm does go off, can I ask that you please follow officers to the fire exits, out of the building and to the designated meeting points. For mobile devices and tablets, for those in the room, can I ask that you please switch off any mobile devices before the meeting starts or put them on silent. For viewers at home, you will note that councillors and officers of the committee may use their tablets or laptops during the meeting to view the agenda paperwork. For meeting feedback, there is a link at the bottom underneath the live broadcast, so any feedback is gratefully received. And now I can go on to the attendees this evening. So I'll introduce the voting members of this evening's committee. We'll start with Councillor Higgins, the Vice Chairman. Good evening. We have Councillor Bennett, we have Councillor Davis, we have Councillor Dott, Councillor Gaelic and Councillor Gill. So good evening and welcome to the voting members. We also have our officer team this evening, and I'll introduce those very quickly. So have our Major and Strategic Planning Applications Manager, Mandip Malhotra. We have our Specialist Planning Manager this evening, Ian Thyme. We have Michael Brigginshaw, our Principal Planning Officer. Good evening. Our Legal Advisor this evening is Glenn Egan, and our Democratic Services Officer bringing everything together for us all is Neil Fraser. So, I will now go to the agenda. Agenda item 1, apologies for absence, Neil.
All members are present, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest in matters before this evening's meeting. Any declarations of interest? No, none are noted. Agenda item 3 is to agree the minutes of the previous meeting. We have 2 sets of minutes to agree. The meeting of the 21st of July. Can I take those as agreed? Thank you. And we have the minutes of the meeting on the 26th of July. Can I take those as agreed? Thank you. Agenda item 4 this evening, matters notified in advance or urgent. There are none. And agenda item 5 is to confirm public and private reports. All items this evening are in part 1, which is public. There are no part 2 private items. Okay, that's agenda item 5. Before I go on to agenda item 6, I'd just like to announce and say our thanks to Neil Fraser, who is our Democratic Service Officer. He will be leaving Hillingdon Council quite soon, onto a new chapter. And I think on behalf of this committee and on behalf of past chairmen, I'd just like to thank you for your support and guidance through these meetings. So may we wish you every success for the future. Okay, thank you. Right, we can now get to agenda item 6, which is an HS2 application for the Ruislip Southern Sustainable Placement in Harefield Village. And on that note, I'll pass over to Ian to take us through the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So item 6, planning application for request for approval of plans and specifications and site restoration under conditions imposed by Schedule 17 of the High Speed Rail HS2 Act 2017, relating to the proposed development of a site of 421,592 square metres and for the disposal of waste material arising from HS2 works. So the application for us actually has 3 sets of approvals under the HS2 Act. Approval 1 focuses on the method of disposal, and the consideration is simply restricted to whether or not the method of disposal is sufficient or not, and that's Schedule 17, Paragraph 7. Under Schedule 17, Paragraph 8, the restoration, and the consideration on this area is a bit more expansive than normal. It's basically whether we like the way that it's been restored. And under Schedule 17, Paragraph 3, for the alignment of a fence. So not the type of fence, just the simple alignment. And just for completeness, the application has effectively got in principle approval through the HS2 Act. So this is effectively a reserved matters application in which we're considering mainly the restoration, but also whether or not we're happy with the method of disposal. So in terms of site location, up near Ickenham Harefield, east of Uxbridge Golf Course, in between Breakspear Road South and Harefield Road. So it's a triangular bit of land all in between, going up to the Chiltern line to the north and then coming down as the two residential communities converge towards the southern end. The proposal is essentially to sustainably place, since we're on HS2 terms here, sustainably place significant quantities of material on two mounds and restore the area that's in the land shown red there. So in terms of methods of disposal, just for some context, on the map in front of you at the minute you can see a large star West Ruislip portal. That's at Ruislip Golf Course. That's the TBM. TBM will work its way eastwards into London, and as it goes it will generate a whole load of muck. That muck goes to the area, the star in the middle of the screen. That's the sorting area. So that material goes all the way there. Some of that material gets put back onto Copthall Tunnel, which is the area just north of the Chiltern line there, which has already been dug out, and that material is going on to the Northern Sustainable Placement area, which was at this committee a few months ago. So muck from the tunnel arisings goes to the sorting area on the star in the middle. Some of it goes back on to fill up Copthall Tunnel, and the rest will go down onto the Southern Sustainable Placement area. And in terms of methods of construction, there's several stages to this. Stage 1, create the haul roads. Stage 2, do archaeological investigations. And you would have seen some comments in the application about one of the more significant finds we had in this particular area. I won't point to exactly where it is because I'm not allowed to, but it's somewhere in that area. And that was some treasure from from a long time ago, which is nationally significant, and that is now currently with the coroner, or the local coroner, to determine whether it is a national treasure or not. Fascinating process, but I won't bore you with it here. Stage 3, creating V-ditches for the drainage. So this is temporary arrangements to collect all the water as they are moving the muck around. Topsoil stripping. So the topsoil gets stored and gets reused because that's quite a valuable commodity. There's a membrane layer to stop water filtering through into the groundwater. That's not to protect contaminants because this material is all inert. That's just to protect the water, the chemical balance of the water, so that it doesn't get too much soils and various things in that changes how it acts. So it's not contaminated, it's not polluted material. Then they build up the waste. Treatment of the waste where necessary. So as it comes out the portal, it goes on conveyor belt, crosses the Chiltern line to the sorting area. I'll come to it in a bit more detail in a second. And it gets treated, and we'll come on to that because that has some people have some concerns about that, but it's relatively standard stuff. Then transportation of the material southwards, working of the material in thin layers where it gets compacted, and then finally replacing the topsoil, and then finishing off the drainage swales all around the base of the two mounds, and then landscaping it. So this is a map of an aerial photograph from a drone taken about 3 months ago now. You can see Chiltern line going from the bottom of the screen up to the top. Copthall Tunnel, which has come to this committee some time ago, which is on the right hand side of the screen, which is all the earthworks there, so they're just digging out the massive hole in a sense, and that material is going to the Northern Sustainable Placement area. The conveyor will run alongside the Chiltern line, across the Chiltern line to the sorting area at the top there. It's called the treatment area. In a little bit more detail, you can see the areas just starting to be constructed across the way, and these areas will take the material. The material will just get checked to see if there's anything untoward that makes it not inert. That's unlikely given that the tunnel boring machine is 15 metres and plus some more underground through Ruislip. The water gets the material gets treated with a lime if necessary, and the lime just basically takes away the moisture content, so enables them to move it. So it's not when we say treatment, it's not a chemical treatment. It's a treatment with lime. It's relatively straightforward, and all that process is governed by the Environment Agency. So that's essentially approval 1, the method of construction. If we move on to approval 2, which is the landscaping, this is the current layout of the site, the aerial footage, and you can see it's rather large and nice and green, and this is actually all farmland at the minute. And under the undertakings and assurances given by Parliament, the intention is that this would be returned to farmland to the current landowner, to the current farmer, on cessation of the works, subject to various agreements. And this is current image taken from Google from Harefield Road, looking northwards. And this image is just purely to illustrate that actually the land is already, it's undulating. It actually slopes from Harefield Road to Breakspear Road south, and it goes from about 60 metres down to 45 metres. So there's a fairly hefty drop from west to east already. And again, you can see this from Breakspear Road side. You can see the images of the rolling hills in between the two roads. So in terms of what is actually going to take place, the arrangement is to dispose sustainably placed material at up to 5 metres on the southern mound and then 3 metres on the northern mound, and the intention is just to fit it within the landscape so that you can see. I'll come on to some images in a minute. So that was the northern section, no tipping there. The tipping starts on the northern mound there, which is about 3 metres higher than it is currently. And you can see the lay of the land, or the fall, is towards the northeast. Towards the southern end, a bit more tipping in this area, in between the houses. And we've got to remember at this point, Chair, that the purpose of this is to remove the amount of HGV vehicles that would be taking this material away somewhere else. And that's about 120,000 lorry movements that would go on the road if it wasn't to go here. So that's the purpose. And if we come on to the apologies, Chair, these maps aren't great, but you can just about see a simple line, dotted line, just on those sections here. You can see them on there, the other councillors. That's the current level at the minute, and that's the new black line is where the tipping is going to take place. So there is quite a lot of material, but it is, unlike the northern sustainable placement, which are up to 18 metres high, this is relatively moulded into the landscape in a bit more sensitively. This area in the middle, there's a group of trees which are mature trees. You can just see in there. So if you wanted to dispose on that area, you'd have to get rid of those mature trees, but they've been decided that they are of ecological value, so they're being retained. So the tip material is either side, and leaving that in the centre. And again, apologies for the quality of the maps, but you can see that there is a broad flowing landscape to this. Baseline images from, and year 15 images from HS2, taken from Breakspear Road South. So you can see the top one just about level with the hedge, just over the hedge line, and then you can see the second one down. You can definitely see the difference in the mound, but not to a sense that it's dramatically changed the landscape. That's the opinion of the officers anyway. And again, from Breakspear Road South, again you can see existing at the minute, and then the proposed 1 year and then 15 year. Not much planting in this area. This is because it's farmland. So this is a dairy farm that also grows hay for forage and for stabling activities, and that's intended what it will be intended for afterwards. Going to Harefield Road, classic HS2 image. Take a photo from behind the hedge so you can't see anything, but I think that indicates that actually the lay of the land doesn't actually go above the hedge line. So it sort of gives an indication that the actual sustainable placing of the material is very difficult, actually, I tell you, Chair. The sustainable placement of the material is not too harmful for the landscape. To illustrate the tipping in a bit more detail, the yellow areas changes the landscape there, the grey is the existing. So in terms of restoration, landscaping is next. So at the northern end, this is the area that's going to be converted into woodland, just south of the Chiltern line. We've secured a public right of way through here as well, so that didn't exist until we put pressure on HS2 to secure that, which will be a good benefit for residents, particularly as that meets up with the Groundwork South application, which we saw last time, Chair. and then we'll take you into the Colne Valley and along the Grand Union Canal. An area of woodland just south of that, that's a controversial element. I'll come on to that in a bit more detail. And then towards the end, it's just the end of the bottom of this image, you can see grassland. And this is all going to be restored to grassland as well, apart from the area of the drainage basin, and I'll come on to that. I've got a slide on that in a second. And towards the southern end, again, just to illustrate that will all be grassland, and you can see the retained mature vegetation that is being preserved. Simple slide. You see the two areas, darker areas at the top of the woodland, drainage basin in the blue to the east of the site, and then the rest of it is just basically as it should look now, with hedgerows in it and landscaped and grassed over. Onto drainage, because I know this is a very hot topic in this area, particularly as the fall is fairly significant from Harwell Road to Breakspear Road South. The requirement for HS2 is to ensure that there is no negative impacts on the current situation. So there's no requirement for them to improve the situation, but the modelling and their approach to drainage indicates that there will actually be a slight betterment. Although there's no requirement to do that, there is a slight betterment. There's a series of leaky dams connected to the drainage system here, so the drainage system all goes towards the northeast end here. The drainage basin will retain much of the water, and there's a series of leaky dams, which is basically natural flood management, we would call it. It's a series of timber in the water that allow in the drainage network, which allows water to just filter through, and that just holds back water. So that will have some improvement. The woodland area is the controversial element. HS2 are adamant that this woodland area has to take place here. They haven't provided suitable justification in terms of the officer's opinion. There's plenty of areas where the woodland can go. Now, by putting the woodland here, you reduce the amount of farmland available. And in the words of the farmer, I'm a farmer, I'm not a lumberjack. So he's not overly keen to see this woodland retained on this site because it reduces the amount of farmland he has, and we're obviously in the same opinion as the landowner. So we're actively trying to get this woodland removed. HS2 believe it's necessary to secure their environmental minimum requirements, although we don't believe that they've provided suitable justification yet. In terms of the fence line, approval 3, simple post and rail fence here. It's a livestock fence just to protect the drainage basin as it establishes. In time, that will become a hedgerow. So again, officers don't necessarily have a problem with the alignment of that. So in terms of the recommendation is approval subject to a condition that we've agreed with HS2. So it's basically the condition requires us to look to an alternative location for that woodland. There are a number of areas that we've got to look at. There's a whole host of areas that are being restored by HS2 that we think we can fit more woodland on, and the officers will work with HS2 to try and secure that. We've agreed a 12-year period. I should just make a note at this point, Chair, as well, that we've got a bit of a typo in here that we're going to clean up afterwards. I'll leave it. I won't point it, Chair. So the officer recommendation approval subject to condition and a slight change to the typo. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Ian. As this committee, I think not everybody's been involved in HS2 applications, but they know that they are very technical and we are quite constrained. But thank you to Ian for trying to unravel that for committee members. I'm sure they've got a few questions. But before we go to members, I'm just going to bring in Glenn to sort of give us from a legal perspective.
Chairman, thank you. As always, the first question for committee is, are you satisfied there's sufficient information before you to make a decision? On the basis that there is, the legal advice there, I'd echo what Ian has said there, the Council's hands, as always, are pretty tied by the legislation. I think the major issue here is relating to site restoration. Officers have negotiated a condition for HS2 to use best endeavours. Best endeavours is a legally recognised term, so HS2 would have to say, we have tried 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We'd say, well, you should try 6 and 7. they then have to explain why they couldn't try 6 and 7, if I might put it that way. So it is a legally recognised term. It's the best that can be achieved, I think, through negotiation. If members are minded to refuse the application or restoration, do bear in mind if this goes on appeal, there is no guarantee of that condition being imposed on appeal or being accepted by HS2 on appeal. So I do think there is the best that can be done, Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, no, thank you for that. Wise words as always, thank you. Okay, right, I can see Councillor Higgins and Councillor Davies indicating.
Thank you, Chairman. I've got a few questions, so I hope you bear with me. On the trees that HS2 are saying to plant there, how many trees are there that they're thinking of planting, and can we, in this committee, agree to where that we would like them to go? That's my first question, so that's a little bit of a legal question. The second one is on the National Treasure, which is one of my favourite films, actually. I just want to make sure that, obviously, that's found on our land. Will there be a benefit to this council if that is worth a considerable amount of money? Because I think we should have it, not theirs. So that's my second question. The farming aspect, Ian, did you say hay and, what was it? Hay and dairy. So with those undulations on the ground, that wouldn't be a problem to have to use that, I'm led to believe. Also, but I'm going to ask you that part of that walkway, which I think is quite a way, it's actually that top end is still woodland, isn't it? So that wouldn't affect the cows going into the woods, as it were, and dogs chasing after them. That would be my other thing. The interesting thing was about the tree left at the bottom of the ditch. And if the soil is higher, then surely the water content will increase there, and that could actually rot that tree. So that would be my other thing. And lumberjack, I've just put a note here. I've never heard lumberjack since Monty Python, so I nearly started going into song, but I won't go about that one. But anyway, those questions, if they could be answered for me, that'd be helpful.
Okay, before we hand over to Ian, just to again paraphrase what you came up with then, councillors. So, how many trees and what species, and do we get a say in the type of species, I guess, and where they're going? National Treasure, do we get some bounty from that, I guess, is what you're looking at. Clarification around the undulating nature of the ground, and just to see whether or not that's still relevant for farming. And a good question, I think, which is around the impact of the tree being sort of below ground level. Is that going to have an impact on the tree with water, I guess, is what you're picking up. So, you okay to pick those up, Ian?
Thanks, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. So in the first instance, the area is 4.2 hectares, but it's not an exact science, so it's not that jigsaw puzzle has to feature somewhere else. That 4.2 hectares has to achieve something, and part of the problem that we've had with HS2 is we don't really know what they're trying to achieve with that 4.2 hectares. So if we were to go somewhere else, it's not the quantum of trees that's necessary, it's what it's trying to mitigate in terms of the harm of HS2. So it might be a smaller number elsewhere. Where can it go? That all depends on the restoration of land around the area, because it has to mitigate for impacts broadly in and around where the trees were lost, which was on top of the Copthall Tunnel as we know it now. So it has to be broadly in the area. We've identified potential at the northern sustainable placement, because you remember, Chair, that we left that open for landscaping. So there's potential to work with HS2 on that, and then there's further areas around the Copthall Tunnel and around the Groundwork South area that we talked about last time. So at this point, I would be reticent to say that we should set where they could go for HS2, because we have to work with HS2 as to achieve that, because it has to meet their minimum requirements and their mitigation requirements. So I think we've got some broad areas in this area to give us something to work with, that I can say. In terms of the National Treasure, do we get it? It actually was found on, it wasn't found on our land. There is a whole host of National Treasure Act, which I managed to dig out one day, which was fascinating. But essentially, the finder and the landowner would split it. It all depends on whether it gets determined as to national treasure. If it's national treasure, then there's a bidding process which the British Museum or one of the national museums might want to take up, and then the money would then, in agreement between the finder and the landowner. If it's not national treasure, we have already been in discussions with HS2 to see if we could acquire it and retain it in the borough. So the leader has been keen to see that take place. So those discussions are ongoing. The coroner's had it for about 2 or 3 years now, I think, and we're still waiting for them to determine whether it is national treasure or not, and that dictates what happens next. In relation to the hay and the dairy, so the current landowner has been involved in these discussions throughout. Some of them have been fraught because of the woodland and some of the other requests of the landowner to take the land back. But we've reached a position where we were comfortable of bringing it to committee because the landowner had reached a position he was satisfied that there was sufficient space for his cattle and growing his crop, subject to the woodland. And then finally, the tree runoff into the ditch. The areas around the bottom of the mounds are all have got ditches and swales alongside the bottom to take water away. So the tree, we did ask the question during the process. The tree is deemed by the ecologists at HS2 that it would survive. That water was taken away from it, so it's not going to be sitting in standing water, which would obviously be a problem. But the swales and the drainage network would take it away. And no further comments on the lumberjack. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Right, Councillor Higgins, did you want to come
sorry,
back?
can I come back? Glenn, can you give me some legal bits on, firstly, are we allowed to say that we're informative of where we'd like it to go, where the trees would like to go? Obviously, we can't condition it, and for officers to go back and work on that, are we allowed to do that? And the second thing, which will really roll me, if HS2 get half the profits of that treasure for finding it, that would really, I think my residents and I think most of this committee would be actually furious about the destruction they're doing to our borough, that they then participate in getting something. If it goes back to the government, I don't have a problem with that, but I do have a problem if it goes back to HS2.
Okay, pick those up, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'll take some learning from Ian on the National Treasure Act. I think if I remember rightly, this goes back to Norman the Conqueror or something. So if when that decision is made, I'll give some advice then, if I may, Chairman. And I think then in relation to the informative, I've got no problems with that. That will inform the discussions with HS2, and it will show them that actually the committee does mean business there, and hopefully that may spur them on in their best endeavours. So I've got no problem with that, Chairman.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Davies.
Thank you, Chairman. So I've got a question on this lone tree. The vibrations, I'm assuming we're going to have some heavy vehicles coming in. Is that going to have any risk to the roots of this one tree? If so, is it worth keeping?
It's actually there's a group of trees down there, some mature vegetation. So it's not just one tree, although there's a substantial mature oak down there. I think it's an oak from my recollection. The method statements have indicated that the tree and that area would be protected. It's got some protected species in them. We believe that there are benefits to bats. So the simple answer is that they have to make sure that they survive.
So I'm assuming they'll just be fencing it off to protect it, yeah?
They would be, outside the tree, the root protection area.
Okay. I have a second question, Chairman, if that's okay.
The floor is yours.
Do we have an operation time for this site? Because I'm conscious that the bottom end at Breakspear Road is by residential properties. So will normal operating hours apply?
Thank you, Councillor. It's a good question because actually what we're looking at in terms of planning is one element. The construction noise is dictated by Section 61 consent, which is already in place. We are, as officers, we're always torn with getting HS2 to get on and get out of here, as well as obviously protecting residents as well. Any slippage to their programme obviously has impacts on taxpayers. We've talked about this before, Chair, is whenever we do put constraints on them, we also have to be mindful that we are also possibly expending the use of taxpayers' money. So we are in a position at the minute where they are allowed to work in core hours, which is 8 in the morning till 6 at night. There is an extension in this area outside core hours on a Saturday. We are reviewing that now, given the current issues that we've got down there. We're obviously aware that there's been some activity down there where things like dust suppression haven't gone according to plan, and we've put HS2 on notice to sort those out, and they've ceased works after we told them to sort those issues out. So in terms of this, those activities are covered by the Section 61 noise consent, but we'll be looking to keep them to core hours, although probably extended on Saturdays. Just in terms of the total time frame, 2 years of tipping and then 3 years of monitoring, and that's for stability and things like that. So they have to revoke their landfill licence within 3 years afterwards, and that's from the Environment Agency.
Okay. One final question, if that's okay.
You may come. You may come back. Yes, of course.
Is there a distance of the boundary, so the base of the mound to the perimeter fence? Because I'd be worried about that as well affecting the residents on Breakspear Road.
Yeah, unfortunately it does go up quite close, but there is a buffer on either side. So you've got existing mature hedgerows on both Harville Road and Breakspear Road South that you can see from the Google Street View images, and the buffer is being retained, so it is worked backwards, so it is away from the edge of the roads as much as possible. The issue comes not necessarily at the base of those slopes, which are relatively shallow at that point. It's more the activity on top of the mounds nearby, which are effectively above the hoardings in the area as well. So that's the big issue that we have to keep a management on. We'll do that through class approvals. So just to be clear, there are other approvals outside what we're looking at today, including class approvals looking at dust suppression and the noise through Section 61. So we meet with HS2 fortnightly to discuss noise matters, dust matters, and we will take that up through those avenues. So if there is a problem, we can track it through different forms of regulation as opposed to the planning.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Bennett, and then followed by Councillor Higgins.
Thank you, Chairman. My question was just around the material or soil that is being sustainably placed. As the tunnel boring machine goes further towards London, I think it comes out at Old Oak Common, which is sort of Harlesden, East Acton way. Are we accommodating all of what is dug up from effectively under Ealing Borough in Hillingdon in these mounds? I suspect yes, because we are at the end of the tunnel, and to not do so means the increase in road traffic to move it elsewhere, but I just wanted to clarify.
That's correct. It doesn't go as far as Old Oak Common. The tunnels are effectively coming from both ends, and they hopefully meet, and at Greenford Way, which is just into Ealing Borough. So it's not quite as far as Old Oak Common, it's a bit before that, but yes, all that material comes out, and at those depths, 15-20 metre depths, the anticipation is that the material is just, geologically sound material that's underneath us that hasn't been contaminated, but that's what the sorting area is for, to make sure that whatever does go in the Southern Sustainable Placement Area is clean, inert material. Anything else does get taken away off-site.
Okay, thank you. Good question. Councillor Higgins.
Yeah, I'd just like to move, and just to obviously the informative, also to be put on record about what I said about the Treasurer and HS2. Don't need that, really would like that, and that legal department will come back to later on that. On the dust just reminded me of something which has nothing to do with this application, so forgive me. On Harville Road, I've noticed that HS2 are getting sloppy and there's mud on the roads now, and they're not cleaning the roads. And with winter coming, I just want to make sure that officers are on top of that. And they've put this traffic light on a bend, which is just beyond me. I don't understand it. Put it before the bend. It's a lot safer. And that's it, really. Thank you. So I'll move it.
Thank you, Councillor Higgins. I'll allow you those comments on the mud on the road, but I think maybe a chat with a ward colleague to put in a members' inquiry to maybe get that one moving along. So, And indeed, so you've moved with an additional informative about the location of trees. And we will record in the minutes the National Treasure Act and the aspiration that we get legal advice once the process has concluded with the coroner and whoever else is. I'm going to look at that act later on. I think I'm going to have a little read. Okay, so we are moved on that basis with those slight amendments. Councillor Davies.
I'm happy to second.
Okay, thank you. I'm just looking around the room. Can't see anybody else indicating, so we are moved and we are seconded. Can I take a show of hands for this application, please? So that's unanimous, Neil, 7 out of 7. Agenda item 6 this evening is approved. Thank you very much, everybody. That was a very good debate. So we can draw a line under that one now. And we're now on to agenda item 7, which is 19 to 22 Chippendale Way, Uxbridge. Michael, over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. So, item 7 relates to 19 to 22 Chippendale Way. The application seeks permission for a deed of variation to the affordable housing schedule of the Section 106 legal agreement secured under the original permission for this site. And that is in order to secure an on-site affordable housing instead of a £150,000 contribution previously secured. So, 19 to 22 Chippendale Way comprises of a vacant plot of land within close proximity to the Uxbridge town centre. The site previously occupied 4 semi-detached houses, but were demolished due to their poor condition. This is the constraints plan. So the yellow colouring shows the site is covered by a parking management scheme, and the blue colouring shows the Uxbridge town centre primary shopping area, and the locally listed old stable building is also shown to the east in that kind of brown colour there. So, so the original application for 12 flats comprising 7 one-bedroom units, 4 two-bedroom units and 1 three-bedroom unit was recommended for approval at the Major Applications Planning Committee in February 2020. Following the completion of the Section 106 legal agreement, the application was formally approved in September 2020. The application was approved on the basis that the site could not viably support the provision of 35% on-site affordable housing. Instead, the legal agreement secured the payment of a £150,000 contribution towards off-site affordable housing. This is the floor plan submitted on the application. So it shows the open market units in yellow and the London affordable rent units in orange. To summarise, 5 out of the 12 units, or 12 out of the 33 habitable rooms, are proposed as affordable, equating to 36.4% affordable housing, or habitable rooms, by habitable room. This includes 4 one-bedroom, 2-person units and 1 two-bedroom, 3-person units. That's the bird's-eye view of the site. You can see that it's currently vacant. And here are some photographs showing the site from the street scene. Again, no development on site at the moment. And that is it. So, yeah, in summary, the principle of on-site affordable housing provision is supported, and the proposal would meet the 35% housing threshold. There is a local need for social rent units, which in this case are provided as London affordable rent. As the proposal would positively contribute to affordable housing and a tenure mix which is needed, the application is recommended for approval, subject to the variation of the necessary legal agreement. I pass back to you, Chairman.
No, thank you very much for taking us through that, Michael. Okay, before we open it up to members, just a reminder, this application is already approved. I think Councillor Higgins and I might have been at the meeting back in 2020 that did that. It's come back to us because there's been a change to the 106, so we're not here to redetermine it, we're just here to look at the change to 106, which is actually, I think, be considered a good news story for Hillingdon. So, on that note, I'll open it up to members. Councillor Dott.
Thank you, Chairman. It's a straightforward application, section 106, deed of variation. So unless my colleagues have anything to debate on, I'm happy to move on.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dott. Councillor Higgins.
I'm happy to second. There's nothing really here to chew over that much, so it's a little bit of a benefit, so why not?
Okay, no, thank you. Right, no other members indicating, so we can go straight to the vote for agenda item 7, please. All those in favour? Take that 7 out of 7, unanimous. So agenda item 7 this evening is approved. Okay, that brings us to the end of the meeting. Thank you very much for everybody participating. Thank you to officers for supporting us this evening. And for anybody watching on YouTube, I'll bid you a good evening. Good night.